Hello and welcome back to the Game Bet Match podcast. I'm your host Manny Friedman. I'm doing a solo pod today. Unfortunately, Brad can't make it, so I just wanted to go over a few things. It's Miami Open is done, and we have three Clay 250s coming up. So I just wanted to kind of recap what we saw in that amazing Mensik performance versus Djokovic in the Miami final, and then kind of go over a few of my thoughts on the futures market in Marrakech, Bucharest, and Houston, along with some first round plays that I have. Um, so as far as the Mensik Djokovic match goes, incredible serving performance again from Mensik. He was really strong in the pressure points, especially in the two tie breaks. That was incredibly impressive given how well Djokovic plays tie breaks typically. And he seemed to be the stronger player physically of the two, which was also surprising to me given Mensik's physical troubles in the past. And, he's only 19. So um, I feel like that was a big improvement that he could make, and to kind of get over the hump here in Miami with the humid conditions is incredibly surprising. Like he's definitely a guy I would not have thought of backing prior to this tournament. So kudos to him for that. I pointed out on the timeline that I thought um, the way Djokovic got the break in that first set was kind of utilizing the slice down the line to Mensik's forehand. So Mensik's forehand is definitely the weaker wing, and he doesn't generate much spin on that shot, and it's hard for him to get the ball up and down and generate his own pace. So I thought Djokovic kind of went away from that in the second set, and he was kind of not necessarily trying to hit through Mensik, but trying to draw errors in ways that weren't effective. He wasn't really making as much progression in rallies as I thought he would, and I thought Mensik was the way more solid player in those instances, like in the longer rallies especially. So that was kind of surprising to me. I thought Djokovic's tactics were just a little bit off, which they're usually spot on in every aspect. So I thought there were bits and pieces of good tactics, but not consistent enough. Maybe it was because how he was feeling physically, with the eye, and maybe his the humidity was getting to him. But I thought that would get to Mensik more, so that was an even very surprising aspect of the match. Um, I have to commend Mensik's ace rate all tournament long. Absolutely staggering. It was 26.7% versus RBA, 27.6% versus Draper, 27.3% versus Safulin, 24.5% versus Feast, 24.8% versus Fritz, and 17.9% versus Djokovic. So like when he was getting the first serve in, he was acing a lot of the time. And in contrast, like to his Capcana and Indian Wells campaigns, he was like acing about 14%. So his first serve was incredibly potent, and like, even against good returners like Draper and Novak, I mean, he was still, getting so much like juice on that first serve. And, it was amazing. And as far as the outlook for these two guys, in my opinion, going forward, for as far as Djokovic goes, nothing really changes for me. I think he's gonna kind of struggle to work his way through the clay court swing in the beginning phases. Gonna look to kind of get his footing in Monte Carlo, and then maybe kind of struggle through Madrid, and then he's going to kind of look to peak for Rome and Roland Garros. Like that's usually what happens with him. But I think Clay is going to be a struggle for him, honestly. Like just he's always said it's the most physical surface for him, the one that he needs the most time to get used to. And as he gets older and as he shows some physical struggles, like he did in this final, I think it's just only going to get harder for him going forward. So he's kind of going to be a guy I look to fade in Monte Carlo. He also, now with a deep run in Miami, he only has like probably less than a week to get ready for that tournament. I don't know if he's going to even play. Um, but the market still loves him. He was getting 3 to 4 to 5 game favorites, against the likes of Dimitrov and Musetti here. So, he's definitely going to be a guy you can still fade and get some decent prices on. As far as Mensik goes, I still think I'm not going to update my priors too much in terms of how the clay season is going to go. I think the physicality concerns with him. Yes, he put a great week together, but he did have days off in between. Um, he hasn't really shown that he could, back up a great week with another great week. So, there might be a small let up concern with him, after the only title of his career and such a big moment for him. Maybe he will kind of relax a little bit and that urgency is going to go down slightly. That's just conjecture. So you know, everyone would have their own opinion on that. But I also think Clay, just from a game perspective, is not the best for Mensik. Um, he does have really flat shots, and the Clay kind of doesn't help that kind of game style, as it usually suits like higher spin or a heavier top spin. Um, and I think that forehand would be a liability on the Clay, because instead of penetrating through the court, it's kind of gonna like sit up and be very attackable. So I think Clay is going to be a struggle for him. I might actually look to fade him, given I think the market is going to look at this Miami run and be like, wow, he's a top 10 caliber. He might get, some good. He might be like a minus 300 favorite against a guy he shouldn't be that favorite against. So I'm definitely going to look to fade Mensik in spots coming up, and it's going to be interesting to see how the market prices him. So those are my thoughts for the Mensik Djokovic final. On to the Clay 250s coming up. Let's start with Marrakech. So there's some altitude here, about I think 1,200 feet of altitude is what I remember seeing. So that usually helps big servers, helps kind of underpowered guys get some more on their shots. Like Carballes Baena has done well here in the past. I think he's won and made a final in the last 2 years. So there are definitely some guys that the altitude clay suits. The two guys that I'm really looking to attack here are Carballes Baena. Obviously, he's at 14-1, and Jaime Munar, who's 10-1. I particularly like that they're on opposite ends of the draw, which means that if they play in the final, you kind of have a built-in hedge price there. They're both in really good form. Our Carballes Baena, as I said, has done well here in the past. He obviously really likes the conditions. He kind of thrives, as Brad always says, he thrives in difficult conditions. If there's like wind, altitude, bad court surface, which Marrakech should. I don't think they have the highest quality clay courts out there. That's usually environments that Carballes Baena thrives in. It feels like he's kind of a tough-minded, gritty kind of player. Um, I also think, Munar, he's just been super impressive this year. I mean, I know most of his good results have happened on hard court, but I feel like, as we said on the last pod, he's really found the balance between knowing when to play offense and when to play defense. He's kind of found, like, I always felt like in the past he struggled with that balance. And this year he's kind of finally put it together. And I also think his serve has drastically improved. And he's added maybe 5 miles per hour on each of his ground strokes, which has really made a difference. So I think all those factors also can play up at altitude, because he still can be underpowered versus certain guys, but that altitude gives him a little bit more firepower, and I think he's going to be a tough out here. One thing with Munar, though, is that you have to be careful about Alexander Muller, who's in his quarter of the draw. I think if they play, I would expect Munar to probably be like a minus 140 favorite, maybe a minus 150. So I think he's going to be slightly favored if they play in the quarterfinals. But I think that, that's a tough, probably the toughest matchup on the road to the final. I think Greek Sport is at the top of the draw. I don't particularly like him on clay. I'd also much rather back the Greek Sport as a dog. He's shown that he could beat top guys, but as a second favorite to win the event at plus, I think 550 it was. That's not a price that's really enticing for me. And he's kind of also a guy I would like to bet match to match. Especially if you get a good underdog price. He's kind of like a giant killer with his big serve and attacking game, but like he can also go off the rails. So I don't really want to play that kind of I don't like the favorite status with Greek Sport. As far as long shots, I really like Gaston here at 33-1. He's in the weaker section of the draw. I think he's on that bottom quarter. Darderi is in that little section. He just played a made a deep challenger run in Naples, where he played 2 matches in one day and lost in the final to Vitko Priva. And I also think that Gaston presents a tough matchup for Darderi, because Darderi is kind of erratic, more aggressive minded, whereas Gaston can run down a lot of balls. And I actually think the altitude helps him. I think he's had a good run in Stade before. And I think, Gaston had a pretty good Sunshine double. He's kind of built some confidence. I really think that that's a tough matchup. And Sonego is also in that section, but he's way too erratic to back on clay, especially at I think he's 7-1 to win this event. So not a price that I want to attack. So I think the MP9 guys, just a shout out to them, MP9 and Tidbits Tennis, they did a pod and they kind of mentioned similar things that I am, but I tend to be in agreement with a lot of what they said. So if you want further reasoning, they have great qualitative analysis. Definitely check out their pod. As far as Bucharest goes, I have to back Ugo Carballi here. He's 10-1 to win this event. He's definitely my favorite play. I have to say he's done nothing but impress this entire year. He's been in so many battles. He's definitely battle tested, 3-setter after 3-setter. Just a tough out. He even proved to be a tough out against Novak Djokovic in Miami, forcing that second set to a tiebreak. And his section of the draw, his little quarter there is ridiculously easy. He's got Shevchenko, he's got the struggling Kaboli in there, he's got VDZ and Gasquet. And with Ugo Carballi's consistency, his stability, his kind of mental toughness, I think, and the confidence he's built this year, I think he should be the favorite in that quarter. And then if you look at his potential semifinal opponent, it would be Pedro Martinez, Stan Wawrinka, Zhumer. There's a lucky loser, and there's Bassa Veretti there. Pedro would be obviously a tough match if that happens, but definitely beatable. And the other guys in that section are nothing that Ugo Carballi can't beat at this present moment. So the bottom half is definitely weaker. So I kind of want to attack a guy in that half of the draw as opposed to the top half. The second quarter is an absolute murderous row of players. It's an incredible quarter. You got Nico Yari there. You got Dusan Lajovic playing Chris O'Connell in the first match. You got Luca Nardi playing defending champion Marton Fucsovics. And then you got Laszlo Giri playing Navoni, which is the first match on Monday. I think you arguably have, Navoni, Fucsovic, Lajovic, and Yari probably are four of the 8 best players in this draw, or 4 of the 7 best players in this draw. So that's a really tough quarter, and they're all in decent form. I mean, Giri won Santiago, but he hasn't played since. Navoni, he made the final here last year. Fucsovic, as I said, is defending champion. Yari has really struggled, but you still have to kind of respect his serve and his fight. But I wouldn't back him to win the event, but he could definitely, if he gets hot, he can do something. And Ljovic is a good clay court player as well, along with O'Connell. So really, really tough section. As a result, I don't really want to back any of them in the futures market. I'd rather kind of play it match to match, potentially do a rollover. Navoni would probably be the guy I would be leaning. Um, Looking at it right now, but man, it's going to be tough to get out of that. As far as the first quarter, you got Sebi Baez, the number 1 seed. Um, he really should get out of the quarter, but he's just really struggled in Europe. Um, Despite being so good in Golden Swing. I don't really, he's done it so often where he's had a good Golden Swing and just kind of done so poorly in Europe that I really can't back him here. Even though you would think that he would play well in these conditions. Um, I think the heat and humidity in South America actually help him, and it's going to be pretty cold and damp in Bucharest. So I just don't think Baez feels comfortable in those European conditions. So he should get out of that quarter, but I just can't back him, especially, I think he's the favorite to win this event at plus 550. So just nothing that really excites me. So those are my thoughts on Bucharest. As far as Houston goes, I really like Nakashima at plus 750. Given how strong he was in Indian Wells and Miami, he really impressed me. Really, I know that he's not the most athletic guy and the most flashy guy, but he's just so mentally stable and consistent. And like he's always gonna give a good effort. And I think he's by far the best player in his quarter of the draw. I would be shocked if he didn't get through that quarter. Nishikori, Hijikata, Eubanks, Galan, and McDonald are the potential opponents in his quarter. I know Nishikori could probably present some problems, but I really think Nishikori is overvalued at this point. I don't think he's nearly the player he once was. And I think, given that Houston plays a little bit quicker than most standard clay courts, it is that hard true surface. I think just Nakashima's serve and his consistency would get to Nishikori. So I definitely like Nakashima. I also want to fade Mickelson in some capacities, coming off a pretty bad flu. Really hasn't been in the best form as of late. I don't think he played Miami, and he had to retire in Indian Wells, I believe. So I'll likely be fading him against Leonard Tien in the first round, which is a tough match. And getting plus 550 is just not good enough to back Tiafoe on clay. I know he's won this event once, beating Echeverry in the final, I believe 2 years ago, but he just hasn't shown enough consistency for me to get involved with him in the futures market. So not gonna go there. As far as Q1 goes, I really like Colton Smith. He's qualified easily. I think he might be worth a rollover, per se. He would play Duckworth in round 1. And Duckworth is coming off a long week in Morelia, where he lost in the final to Dmitry Popko, but he played a bunch of matches there on a different surface on hard courts. And Duckworth's game is just not conducive to clay at all. So I think Colton Smith should be a favorite there and should win that pretty easily. And then Thompson, obviously he's tricky, but Thompson's game is not really conducive to clay either. Kind of has hits flatter. But obviously, Smith would be a dog there, but that's what makes the rollover enticing. And Smith's game, he has, he's really solid from the baseline, likes to come in, feeling confident. Again, as I said, he qualified easily, beating Draxel handily think 4-4 in the second round of qualies. So watch that match and looked really comfortable on the surface. So he's definitely going to be a look for me if I get good price. And also Tommy Paul's in that section, and he hasn't looked good at all either. Went out really tamely to Medvedev in Indian Wells. Um, Cerundolo played great in Miami, beating him, but again, to not even win a set there and kind of like really push him deep into the third when he's a way better hardcore player. I think Paul's struggling a bit with his confidence right now, so I can't back him on the futures market here as well. As far as Q2 goes, I really like. I think Brooksby could be a look to roll over at least for the first couple of matches. Um, he would play Alejandro Tabilo in the second round, and as we all know, he's really struggled this year. I think he only has 2 wins, and just struggling with confidence. So Brooksby, it's kind of an eclectic player, gets a lot of balls back. I think that could be problematic for Tabilo in round 2. As far as like if Brooksby gets past that match, he play let's see, Echeverry, and that's where I think would get tough for him, just given Echeverry's firepower. But then again, Echeverry's not the most consistent guy. He has a tough first match with Kovacevic. So if you get a good price on Brooksby to win the quarter at like 8 or 9 to 1, I think that might be a look. So those are my thoughts on the futures market. So just to recap, in Marrakech, I'm playing RCB at 14 to 1 to win the event. I'm playing Munar at 10 to 1 to win the event. And my long shot, I'm playing Gaston at 33 to 1 to win the event. In Bucharest, I'm playing Ugo Carbai at 10 to 1 to win the event. And in Houston, I'm playing Nakashima to win the event at plus 750. Haven't seen quarter prices yet on Bovada. Hoping they're out early tomorrow morning. But I'll probably look to pounce on a few of those, and I'll post them on X as well. As far as the individual matches go, so a couple plays I really like in the first round. I will be on, as I said, Lerner Tien to beat Mickelson at plus 120. I just, with Mickelson coming off this flu and just not playing a lot of tennis or not playing very well, to be frank. And Tien's kind of propensity of just like getting a ton of balls back and just being very kind of mentally solid. I think that's really going to trouble Mickelson here. And I can't have him as a dog. I think it should be a pure pick 'em match. So I think that the price is a little bit off there. So I will definitely be on that one. In Bucharest, I will be on probably one of the matches I'm most looking forward to is Navoni against Giri. Giri hasn't played since winning in Santiago. He hasn't played over a month. He didn't play either event in Indian Wells or Miami. So that kind of makes me think, is there a lingering injury there? Is he feeling mentally fatigued? What's going on? So I don't really see any reason why Navoni should be an underdog here. I think it's a pure pick. I actually think the line probably should be flip-flopped, given that Jiri hasn't played. I also think that the slower conditions in Bucharest are better for Navoni, just because he's a little bit more solid on the ground. I think Jiri is a little bit more erratic, especially when he's not like confident and feeling the ball. When he's confident, he's like a human backboard. But when he hasn't played and he's, you know, not feeling 100%, I think he gets kind of frustrated a little bit too easily, and he's a little bit less mentally stable than Navoni. So it's a slight edge here, but I'm definitely going to be on Mariano. As far as the other looks, I'm on Gasquet to win a set against Van de Zandschulp. Van de Zandschulp is, to me, is like a pure dog or pass guy. He's He's a guy that can play great tennis against the best players in the world, as we saw him beating Djokovic and Alcaraz. But then he can also completely lay an egg and just make a gazillion unforced errors and just look completely disinterested. So I think, and just looking at Gasquet's results, he's not been great, but when he's played, he's been pretty competitive. So I think he can make this a match, and I think he can sneak out a set, especially if VDZ is not feeling 100%. So those are some of my favorite plays. I'll have a few more that I'll definitely post on X as well. Hopefully we'll do a pod with Brad sometime this week to either go over the matches, recap, you name it. So it's been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for the engagement, and we'll see you soon. Peace out, everyone.